Every design problem has a different solution because they're facing totally different requirements. We've done straw bale walls in the country, that end up about 550 millimetres thick. Now, that works brilliantly when you've got a lot of space, but it doesn't work so well in the city where every bit of space counts. So, and I do believe that there's not many materials one could say are not environmentally friendly. It's more about how you use those materials, and you've got to make sure that they're doing the job they need to be doing, whether that's providing insulation or providing thermal mass or providing a very good waterproof external envelope, and making sure that in the application that they're designed to last for a long time, because part of a sustainable solution is that it has a longevity and that you don't have to redo it and pull everything out and redo it in 5 or 10 years' time. This is a really great example of what sustainable living in the city could be, because it is essentially occupying 40 square metres of land, and it's right adjacent to the centre of the city. So a person living here is not really taking up much space, but they have got some outside space. It's probably better than an apartment because you're totally in control of your own space, and you've got a courtyard. But it's as compact as a 2-bedroom apartment. It's a total area of 65 square metres. Someone living here can live quite happily without a car because they can walk to virtually everything they need, and great public transport really on the doorstep. So I think from that point of view, it's just its presence is really sustainable. And then by retaining as much of the building stock, which is not much because it's so little, from before, I think retaining that embodied energy and that culture and history is also a really good thing. And then all the new work was done to as high sustainability standards as was possible, and all the materials and fixtures and everything, we are very attentive to making sure that they are as good as they can be and have low emissions internally, and end up being very positive for the environment. It is a tough little site because north is actually on the street front, and we weren't really able to touch any of that, so we couldn't increase any solar gain. But in actual fact, this window in this room brings in light to this living room, and upstairs it's a beautiful bedroom with sunlight. At the back, where there isn't solar access, what we did was we looked to provide a really nicely insulated side that would then make sure we don't lose heat through that way. And we've also made sure that the windows work, and we've got ceiling fans and other things so that we can naturally ventilate, and we've got a gas heater which will warm the house with the least emissions possible. We worked really hard to try and work out where we'd put a water tank, but there just wasn't room to put a water tank. There wasn't room to put a hot water heater, so we've got an instantaneous gas one. I don't think I've ever worked on such a tight site before. But we've gone for high efficiency instantaneous gas. We've gone for high efficiency water fixtures, toilets and other things to make sure those impacts are as low as possible. We've gone for low VOC paints and glues. The insulation has been really carefully thought out so that we understand where the moisture will happen and that it can escape. It's using more European detailing than sort of standard Australian detailing. All the windows and doors and floors are FSC certified timber, and the new stairs. So wherever possible, we've specified the cabinetry is all AO board, which is the least emissions or zero emissions board as the base. And the finishes are also the least possible emissions as well. The extension has all been done in stud work rather than double brick construction, which is closer to what was happening in the front. The front walls are masonry, they're not actually brick, there's concrete, and then there was a mixture of stuff. The rear section we decided to do in stud walls because one, we wanted to achieve high levels of insulation because it's on the south side and we didn't want to lose a lot of heat. And to achieve high insulation, we needed really, at least 100 mil of insulation. If we were to put that into a double brick wall, we'd end up with the wall that's nearly 350 millimetres thick, and we just did not have the space. As I said, the site is 40 square metres. So we wanted to keep the space down, which is why we could get the insulation we needed in a stud wall much more easily and not occupy too much space. And then the stud work, all the timber used was FSC. We were hoping when we came to reuse the existing windows, but they just weren't going to work in a safe way. You know, they just weren't going to work, full stop. So we then rebuilt them with the smaller panes to look like the previous ones. And in fact, the sandstone facade had to be rebuilt because it was kind of falling out and it was very dangerous. So that was quite a painstaking operation of pulling it all down and then rebuilding it step by step. And it's a very narrow laneway that this house fronts onto, so we had to have particular awnings, which are very expensive. I admire my client enormously for persevering with and doing the right thing by maintaining the heritage of and its contribution to the streetscape. There's a whole lot of stuff that is not more expensive, that is just about getting orientation right, about ensuring there's proper ventilation, windows and doors in good locations. There's just, you know, providing eaves so that you've got shelter. There's a whole lot of stuff that doesn't cost any more. Then there's some stuff that might cost a bit more, like putting better insulation in, but the effective cost difference is so minimal and the payback period is so short that I don't really classify that as additional cost. When you start getting into good quality windows and doors, that does cost more. I have a number of clients who are very happy to pay a little bit more for being good citizens of the world and buying materials that aren't damaging the world so that they can have some enjoyment. You know, then you can go on to saying, well, there might be, the photovoltaics might cost more, water tanks might cost more, etc. And sure, they might cost more, but the payback period, there are payback periods, and they can add to making your place better. Unlike, say, super big plasma television sets of which there's no payback period. I've just come back from looking at zero emission houses in America, and I went to Europe earlier in the year. And as we head into the future where energy prices and water prices are going to be higher, by making our houses much more comfortable to live in without having to put in hugely expensive to operate conditioning systems or using lots of water that we don't need to, then those houses will be really well placed to deal with an inevitable future. This whole block is only 40 square metres in site area. It was built in the 19th century, so the 1800s, late 1800s. Originally a dunny lane came along in here, but at some point, and I'm not exactly sure when, they sorted out the sewerage and that dunny lane was incorporated into this house. So this room was even smaller than it currently is. But the upstairs room was always as wide. When we came, there was timber panelling to cover over, and it was kind of a bricked in where the dunny lane used to be. I don't know that it had been ever renovated. I think it was in a very original state. Our client who got us on had tried to fix some of the things like the electrics and the guttering, and the tradesmen she'd had were quite disrespectful of the building and its heritage. So when she came to us, she really wanted to see what we could retain of what was existing and really respectfully treat it and make good the bad work that had been done before. There was timber floors, but they were bouncy. The windows were broken. The ceilings were falling through. The roof was in place, but there were no ceilings upstairs and there were plants growing in. There was this room and one room up there with a very precarious staircase that led to it. And then out the back there was a kitchen that was attached to here that you kind of went through this opening towards. And then there was a garden with a bathroom at the back that was just totally overgrown with weeds and all sorts of things. And I don't know when anyone last lived here, but you'd sort of feel it must have been 5-10 years ago. So it was pretty derelict. So yeah, that's how we found it.